This is the Louie T Network. You are now officially in the lab room. It's that time again. It's that time again to go hard in the off season, cause we trying to win. We gon' go so hard, we don't take no days off. Hopefully one day it's all gonna pay off.
Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2017 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2017 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale, single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, get an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll divide by the number of picks, and that will yield us that grade that we're looking for. And then we'll move on to the next team in the series picked by you, the viewer. That's right, you, the viewer, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format, or as I like to call it, the Up format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos stating two things: the team you'd like to see next and the phrase next. Some examples: boys next, Cowboys next, Dallas next, next Dallas, next Cowboys, next boys. You got the picture. Very quick, very efficient, very concise, as this is a very aggressive and competitive process. You guys have done a tremendous job thus far, so I want you to keep that momentum going now as we continue to get through this series. And so the next team up in the series, as you probably have guessed already, is America's team. Jers, boys, the Dallas Cowboys. They've been entrenched in a little bit of controversy to start camp. We'll talk about that as we get through this breakdown. However, as they normally do, and I think a lot of this has to do with the little Jones out there, Jerry's son, pulling some of those strings and helping them bring in good football players. You say what you want about the Cowboys organization, okay? And there's a lot that can be said about this organization. The one thing they do well is draft. Now, doesn't always work out, doesn't always pan out, i.e. Randy Gregory, but nonetheless, they do a really good job of bringing in talented football players. Now, they're one of the teams that really irks my nerves in the draft process, because they always draft about 10 players, and like 3 or 4 of them are 7th round picks, which, you know, most of those guys aren't going to make the roster. Nonetheless, I digress. We're going to break down each and every single one of these players and see if they have a shot to make this Cowboys roster. And so we start in the first round, 28th overall selection. Michigan edge rusher Taco Charlton is the selection. Vadante Taco Charlton. And here's a guy that I've already broken down in the 2017 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, by all means, please do on the Louie T Network. Go to the playlist section, and voila, 2017 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series is where you'll find his breakdown, along with some other guys that I was able to get to before the draft. That being said, this is a guy that I know a lot of Cowboys fans initially upon the selection weren't that excited about, but I was a guy that was a staunch supporter of Taco Charlton. He grew on me initially in the process. I looked at him and I wasn't that impressed. That was at first blush. But after going back and really looking at the tape and watching what this guy brings to the table, I think he's only going to get better. He's long. He has a lot of things that you can't teach as a defender. And I think he's going to be the perfect fit in a Dallas Cowboys 4-3 defensive scheme. And he's the type of player that I think will get better and better as time progresses. And he's the type of guy that I think could easily be a double-digit sack getter in this league. And I like what he brings to the table. I like how he plays the game. I like the measurables, the length, and this is a strong guy. I like the quickness and how much space he eats up with that length. He's a long defender, long arms, long legs. I think he's a guy that could be a problem for years to come in this league at the defensive end position. And so I fell in love with this pick, and it didn't take long for me to be on board with what the Cowboys did with their first round pick. And so in the first round, 28th overall selection, Michigan defensive end Taco Charlton for me. Is it all? He's hit deep. Out of here. It's a home run for the Cowboys in the first round. getting a much-needed defensive player. And what you'll find in this draft for the Dallas Cowboys is that they attacked 3 positions, essentially. 3 categories, if you will. They went D-line, they went secondary, so defensive back, whether it's a safety or it's a cornerback, doesn't matter. They went D-line, whether it's a defensive end or a defensive tackle, doesn't matter. And they went wide receiver. Those are the 3 categories that you will find in this draft. Nothing else. No tight ends, which a lot of people thought, well, they need to replace Jason Witten. No tight ends, no quarterbacks, nothing of the sort, no running backs, no offensive linemen, none of that. They strictly went after defensive linemen, D ends, D tackles, defensive backs, safeties, and corners, and wide receivers. Those were the 3 areas that they chose to attack in this draft. That was really fascinating to me. And this was the start of it with the selection of Taco Charlton, which I always argued, chicken or the egg. Which one do you attack first when you need both desperately? If you're the Cowboys, you need defensive line help desperately, and you also need cornerback help desperately after the offseason. Which one do you go first? Do you go and get the edge rusher, or do you go get the corner first? I think they made the right decision. If you want to impact the secondary the fastest, you go and get a guy that can bag quarterbacks. Taco Charlton can do that. So I think they made the right selection, but they didn't waste any time in a very heavy and deep cornerback draft of attacking the next biggest weakness on this team, and that was the cornerback position in the secondary. And they started very quickly in the 2nd round, 60th overall pick. Colorado cornerback Chidobe Awuzie is the selection. Love this pick. This is another one of these guys that I thought slipped under the radar when we were talking about corners because it was such a deep draft with so many high-profile players. He was one of those guys that didn't get talked about a lot during the process, but football purists, if you listen to a lot of the talking heads, they were mentioning his name over and over again, and for good reason, as you put on the tape. 6 foot, 202 pound corner. Again, that 6 foot threshold is pretty much the standard. If you want to play on the outside in this league, you need to be at least 6 feet. There are some guys that can go outside of the box and be a little bit shorter and still get it done on the outside. I'm anxious to see what the Titans are going to do with Adoree Jackson, but there aren't many guys that are going to be able to make a living on the outside in the NFL as a boundary corner, sub 6 feet tall, but he doesn't have to worry about that. But we will talk about that a little bit later on, but his athleticism is where we start. 4'3", an 11-inch broad, or 11-foot, excuse me, broad jump. This is a guy that is just tremendous in terms of an athlete. He moves around very fluidly, very easy going on the field. His movement skills are just outstanding, has no trouble getting from point A to point B, doesn't waste a lot of movement or steps. And so that allows him to be right around the football in the action, right when the play is taking place. And that's why this guy, to me, is underrated, because he's always where he seems to need to be to make a play on the football. And it's because of that athleticism. It's because of those movement skills that he is where he needs to be at the point of catch, contesting the football. Solid zone field. I think he does a really good job in zone coverage of reading route concepts, seeing where the quarterback wants to go with the football, kind of keying his eyes. There's a play against Michigan. Remember, they jumped on top of Michigan 21-0 in the Big House. And if not for an injury to Sufo Lufau, their quarterback, they may have been able to go into the Big House and steal that game. I don't know. Michigan, high-powered offense at the time. They really big-time defense. A lot of their players moved on to the National Football League. I don't know if they would have been able to hold on to that lead that they built early in that game. But I'll tell you what, the defense was firing on all cylinders. And a large part of the reason why Chidobe Awuzie was playing well early in that ball game. Makes a play on a 3rd down where he's sinking into like sort of a cover 2 look. Jake Butt is looking to run a corner route. The tight end for Michigan, who was also drafted into the National Football League, is running a corner route behind Chidobe Awuzie, which is really not his responsibility, but he sinks into that route because he read the quarterback's eyes, saw what was happening around him, read the route combination. Guy in front of him ran a little bit of a hook trying to occupy him, and keep him shallow enough to allow that corner route to get into that honey hole in that cover 2 defense. Chidobe Awuzie wasn't having it, sunk a little bit deeper and was able to get his hands on the football and knock it away. So he has a really good zone feel and does a good job in zone coverage of reading route coverages and concepts, but also the quarterback's eyes to take him to the football. He's an outstanding blitzer. That same Michigan game, he blitzed off the corner. Like I said, he was a big part of the reason they built that early cushion of 21-0. He comes screaming off the edge as a slot blitzer on a particular play, untouched. No one notices because he timed it up well, smashes the quarterback, ball comes out, it's scooped up, and they score, and it's 21-0, and they're riding high in the big house early in the season. And like I said, this is a guy that is a tremendous blitzer from the slot, from the cornerback position, gets it done. Love his ability to disguise what he's doing and then get to the quarterback and hit home. He's an LLCer. He looks for the football on just about every occasion. And you know how I feel about that. Look, locate, contest. He does it among the best in college football, or did do it among the best in college football in 2016. He was a guy that was often, especially shallow to intermediate routes, always where he needed to be to make a play, and he always does a good job of locating the ball. Guys don't look a lot of times, and even when they do, you've got a cornerback that will look, but he doesn't locate the ball soon enough. A little bit later on in the draft, when we get to him, I'll explain that, but this is a guy that he looks, he locates, and he contests. Love that about Chidobe Awuzie. And he's got some versatility. He can play out wide. He can play in the slot. I like to believe that his home at the next level is going to be in the slot. We'll find out. I actually think there's another corner that you drafted that's probably a little bit more suited to play on the outside. We'll talk about why that may not happen, but Chidobe Awuzie is a guy that can play inside or outside. I think the Cowboys are going to try him outside first, and that's always been my stance on guys. Don't tell me what they can't do. Tell me what they can do. I want to see you give him an opportunity to prove that he can't play on the outside before you kick him inside. If I'm the coach, if I'm the coaching staff, that's always my goal, is to have you prove that you can't do something before I say you can't do it. And so you put him outside, you see if he can play with the big boys on the boundary. If he can't, then you kick him inside at slot. But you can move him around. He doesn't have to just primarily play outside. He can be a guy that you play on the outside on certain situations, and then you have different packages where you want to kick him inside, maybe use him as a blitzer, maybe use him in the slot, do some different things with him. You can do that, and that's the versatility you have with a guy like Chidobe Awuzie. And then finally, he's a willing tackler. He will come up, he will tackle, he will throw his body around. Again, half of the battle at the cornerback position in terms of tackling is guys wanting to tackle. This is a guy that wants to tackle. So not saying he's the greatest tackler in the world, but he is a guy that will go in and sacrifice for the good of the team. So you go from those pros to his cons. And the first con is his size. Now, I talked about him having requisite size for the cornerback position at 6 feet 202. However, he's got to be the shortest 6 feet I've ever seen. He's got shorter arms. He looks short. He looks like he's 5'10". He looks like he's 5'11". And again, you're talking about splitting hairs. 5'11" is literally 1 inch shorter than 6 feet, but he doesn't look like the part of a 6 foot corner. There's another guy in this draft that you selected that looks like he's 6'2", but he's only 6 feet, but he's longer. You can tell he's at least 6 feet tall. That's not the case with Chidobe Awuzie. When you look at him, he looks the part of a 5'10" corner. He doesn't have the length that you're looking for at the cornerback position, which lends me to believe that he's going to end up having to be kicked inside. And I don't think that's a problem because his movement skills will allow him to play in a slot where receivers have two-way goals. He'll be able to keep up with them because his movement skills are so good. Does he have a long distance speed? That's a good question because I'm not sure about that. Now, look, the 4.43 40 suggests he should be able to run with just about anybody at any point on the football field. But when you watch him on tape, he seems to be a guy that loses a step as he runs longer and has to open up. And if you're a fast receiver, I think you can beat Chidobe Awuzie deep. So I question the long distance speed. But again, the 4.43 doesn't always translate. Every time we see these guys run 40s and we want to go and make a big stink about these times, it doesn't always necessarily translate to the football field. I'm not sure if he's a guy that the 4.43 40 translates to the field. I'm not sure if that's what he actually is running at his top speed on the football field with shoulder pads on and a helmet. It could be the case. It may not be the case. It doesn't always translate for every single player. I'm not sure if that's the case for Chidobe Awuzie or not. We will see. And finally, I would like him to be more aggressive in the run game. I'm nitpicking here, but I know he can because I've seen him do it, but I don't see him do it often enough. I just like to see him be a little bit more aggressive. Stop letting these receivers block you in the run game and keep you out of making tackles closer to the line of scrimmage. I just love to see him shed some of these receivers, get into the play, get involved, and help his team stop the run just a little bit better. They were so good at Colorado defensively. I would have loved to have seen him be a lot more aggressive in the run game. But again, I'm splitting hairs. I'm being really nitpicky here. This is a guy that I really like. And in the second round, 60th pick overall, Colorado cornerback Chidobe Awuzie for me is a triple. I think the Cowboys got good value here in the second round with a guy that could have easily been a first round pick in a lesser cornerback draft. But because this was such a deep cornerback draft, a guy like Chidobe Awuzie gets pushed down the board. And it's to the benefit of the Dallas Cowboys to get their hands on a player of Chidobe Awuzie's caliber. As we move on to the next selection in the draft for the Cowboys, and it was another tremendous selection at a position of need, cornerback once again, third round, 92nd pick overall, Michigan cornerback Jourdan Lewis is the selection. Remember, this was a guy that had a little bit of trouble in the draft process. Remember, he was supposed to be enthralled and in a little bit of a controversy with his girlfriend. Did he or didn't he get into a domestic violence dispute? That was the word out on the street, was that he drug his girlfriend across the parking lot or the driveway of their home, and it was a messy situation. No charges were filed. He was found innocent as early as the beginning, late stages of the mini camps for the Cowboys, so he was cleared of any wrongdoing in that situation, and that's good for him. Sometimes that stigma, once your name gets attached, is really never gone, but hopefully he can move past that and everyone else can move past that, and that this is a really good football player. When you look at him, the only thing that's stopping this guy from being a first round pick is his size. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But let's get to the pros first. Tremendous movement skills. Much like Chidobe Awuzie, this is a guy that is so comfortable out on the football field. He moves very well. He's graceful in his movement skills. And that allows him to be as aggressive as he is up at the line of scrimmage. This is probably one of my favorite corners around the line of scrimmage because of what he does at the line of scrimmage and thereafter. And we'll talk about all those things. Quickness and physicality are the next two pros. He's got extreme quickness, and so again, much like Chidobe Awuzie, this is a guy that you're probably gonna maybe have to kick inside. If not, I would love to see him get an opportunity outside because I think he's feisty enough, I think he's determined enough, and I think he's athletically gifted enough to play on the outside despite his size. But he's physical at the line of scrimmage. He doesn't care if you're 6'3", 215, or you're 6'1", 200, or you're 5'11", 185. He's in your face at the line of scrimmage, trying to lay hands on you, extremely aggressive around the line of scrimmage with a press. And if you beat him off the line of scrimmage, he's got this great ability to trail. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But his quickness allows him to be on top of receivers in the short to intermediate game, the slants, the crossing routes, the dig routes, anything short to intermediate. Jourdan Lewis is in your hip pocket looking to break it up. This guy does a great job of getting his hands on receivers at the line of scrimmage and then running with them. And this is why I love him as a defender in press coverage, is because even if he's beaten off the line, he excels from trail technique. Now, you don't see this from a lot of corners. They panic when they are trailing a receiver, and they don't flourish in a trail technique. The trail technique is when you are trailing, which is why it's called a trail technique, the receiver on a route, and you have to look back and locate the football with the receiver on top. Most cornerbacks like to stack a receiver, put them on their hip. They feel more comfortable when they know the receiver is right next to them or even behind them on a play. A lot of guys aren't comfortable when the receiver has a step on them. They panic. They don't look back for the football. They start grabbing, which is something that Jourdan Lewis will do from time to time. He will get a little grabby, but His trail technique is by far and away the best I've seen in all of college football. He looks for the football each and every single time, which is why I am so fascinated with Jordan Lewis's game. The next pro, best LLCer. He's the best I've seen. That goes for Marshawn Lattimore and all of these guys that have come out, all the guys that came out of Washington, all of the corners that went the first down, Dory Jackson, all of these guys that were highly touted, Marlon Humphrey, all of these guys. He looks back for the football better than all of them in this draft. His ability to not only trail a receiver, but not panic and look and locate the football and then contest it, by far and away to me the best in this draft. He's got tremendous ball skills. Everyone remembers the play versus Wisconsin to wrap that game up. Tight ball game late, 4th and 10. Wisconsin needing a first down. They decide to go deep. Jordan Lewis, trail technique once again on the play. A bigger receiver has a step on him. Ball slightly underthrown, but nonetheless, he looks, locates, and then goes up with a one-handed inside stab. Not an outside, not like you see normally with a guy who takes his outside hand, goes up and one-hands the football. He uses his inside arm to palm the football and yoke it down and get the interception to wrap the game up. It is one of the best plays you will find in 2016, and that's what he brings to the table. He's got some ball skills. He can make plays on the football. Love what he brings to the table. He'll tackle. He's like I said, extremely feisty and aggressive. He's a guy that will cut you around the line of scrimmage. He'll come up. He'll try to make tackles. I think he could be a little bit better in the run game. But nonetheless, when he has an opportunity, he will come up and hit you. And finally, there's special teams value here. I don't think that the Cowboys are going to look to tap into this with him, but you never know. Injuries crop up. Things happen. Guys like Jordan Lewis are invaluable to have on your roster because they are versatile enough to return punts or kickoffs. He did both at Michigan, but again, they had a guy named Jabril Peppers, may have heard of him, that did a lot of those duties. But when he wasn't taking care of it, Jordan Lewis was, and he wasn't half bad at doing that either. So he does bring some special teams value to the table from that aspect as well. Cons for Jordan Lewis, size and speed. So he's 5'10", 188. That's a question mark, okay? Dory Jackson is 5'10", 186. And I think the Titans are going to give him every opportunity to play on the outside. So again, size is only relevant if you make it a relevant point. Now, again, if you're going up against a Julio Jones, yes, size matters. But if you look around the NFC East, there aren't a ton of huge wide receivers in the division. And so I think you can get away with it in this particular division. If he were playing in the NFC South, where there are big receivers galore, you know, Tampa, Carolina, you look at the Atlanta Falcons, they all got big receivers. You can't have a small corner. And that's why when the Saints made their selection, they were going after a guy like Marshawn Lattimore, a big, long, physical corner. You can't get away with that in the NFC South. But in the NFC East, where there aren't many huge targets, I think a guy like Jordan Lewis can live on the outside, and I would give him a shot outside to see if he could work there, more so than Chidobe Awuzie. I actually think Jordan Lewis could be a much better boundary corner than Awuzie can. But again, Awuzie a little bit bigger. We'll see what the Cowboys decide to do. Even if Lewis has to kick inside, I think he would still be able to get the job done. But I like him better as a boundary corner. But we'll see. And then he's not a fast guy, 4'5", 40. That worries me because when he would miss on the press, he would always be in trail technique. He would never catch back up to that receiver unless the football was underthrown. I think at the next level, and he played in the Big Ten, there's not a ton of speed in the Big Ten. I worry about him long distance speed-wise. You can't be as aggressive. He'll learn that very quickly. If he gets in the wrong receiver's face, they beat him off the line of scrimmage as he tries to jam, and then they smoke him. That may change his perception as to what he can and can't do at the next level. We'll see. But that speed does trouble me a bit, especially being that he doesn't have the length to make up for that speed and overcompensate for the lack of size. So we'll see what happens. He can be beat off the line of scrimmage. I just mentioned that. So I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but he's a guy that is aggressive at the line of scrimmage, will jam, can be beaten off that jam, and that's why he finds himself in the trail technique so often is because he doesn't win on that jam as often as you would like him to, especially against bigger, more physical receivers. But again, we'll see how he decides to handle that, and if he makes the adjustments necessary to allow himself to maybe play on the outside at the NFL level. And he can be a little grabby down the field. He's a guy that, much like a standard corner would, they panic sometimes when they don't know where the football is and they've got a receiver that has a step on him. And so he's no different in that regard. He can be a little grabby, but for the most part, he finds the football. The referees will let you get away with a little bit of a tug and grab if you locate the ball. They will let some things slide. It's the guys who don't look back for the football and want to grab and molest that get the flags 9 times out of 10. He's a guy that will grab, but he will locate ball and contest. If you do that, the referees will turn a blind eye to some grabbing and jostling down the field. So I think he's a guy that could get away with some things if he just continues to locate the football like he did at Michigan. Love this selection. Again, the Cowboys needed to attack their secondary, and they did that aggressively in the first 3 picks with 2 corners. And I love this selection just like I did the last 3rd round, 92nd pick overall. Michigan cornerback Jordan Lewis for me is another triple. I think they've gotten better at the cornerback position with these 2 selections. They like what they saw out of Anthony Brown last year. And then you get Orlando Scandrick coming back. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And all of a sudden now the secondary doesn't look as bad as everyone projected it to be going into the season. If these young guys come along quickly, the Cowboys could have something at the cornerback position. As we move on to the 4th round, 133rd pick overall, North Carolina wide receiver Ryan Switzer is the selection. I thought what they did to Lucky Whitehead was a travesty. It was a farce. I thought they handled it poorly. And I love Jimmy Johnson, and I always would love listening to Jimmy Johnson talk. And I remember him telling a story about how the Cowboys cut a 3rd-string running back in the film room because he was sleeping. And a reporter asked Jimmy Johnson what he would have done if that was Troy Aikman sleeping in that meeting. He said he would have went over to Troy and said, "Hey, Troy, wake up." And so it makes a difference when your name is Lucky Whitehead versus Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, the Cowboys tried to make a statement using a player that was of little importance to them. Why was he of little importance? Because they drafted his replacement already in Ryan Switzer. Lucky Whitehead was expendable, so they decided they wanted to make a point of trying to show that they're not standing for any nonsense. And they did it at the expense of a player that was expendable. They won't do the same thing to Ezekiel Elliott, but I digress. The reason why they felt comfortable getting rid of Lucky Whitehead is because they drafted this next player. And again, I can't blame them for feeling comfortable getting rid of Lucky Whitehead because this next guy is outstanding. 5'8", 181. We'll talk about his size a little bit later on, but let's talk about the pros. Agility and quickness. Had one of the best 20 and 60-yard shuttles of any player at the receiver position at the combine. That tells you that the quickness and the agility, they're off the charts. He can make guys miss in short spaces. He gets yards after the catch. We'll talk about all those things, but just know that the agility and the quickness is what you look for in a top-notch NFL slot receiver in today's NFL. That's what Ryan Switzer brings to the table. You've already got one of those guys in Cole Beasley. Now you got another one to add to the mix in Ryan Switzer. Dynamic route runner. He wins underneath with good routes. If you just want to see the best of Ryan Switzer, turn on the Pitt tape. You don't need to watch another game. Watch the Pitt game from 2016, in which this man started the game fast, caught a little bit of a swing screen, and makes a couple guys miss, gets down the sidelines, picks up about 70 yards on his first catch of the day, and from there he went to work on that Pitt defense, including 3 fourth-down conversions late in that game to help them come back and steal that game from Pitt. He was tremendous. He ran some exceptional routes. One route in particular comes to mind, the final 4th-down conversion he had in that game. I think it was like a 4th and 7, where he runs a stop and then he runs a Z out. It is just so beautiful. He runs, he stops, he plants, he pivots in front of the linebacker. The football is thrown perfectly away from the defender. He goes up, climbs the ladder, snatches it for about a 9-yard gain. He was exhausted at that point in the game because he had done so much to help them come back. But again, his route running ability allows him to separate from defenders. Great catch ability. He doesn't always use his hands. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he catches the football. I don't give a damn how you catch it. You can catch it with your face mask. You can catch it with your forearms. I don't give a damn how you catch it as long as you catch it. And one thing about Ryan Switzer is that he catches the football. It's not always clean, but he comes down with it. And at the end of the day, that's all anybody cares about. He's a slot winner. In this league, you need to win from the slot. On third downs, you need to win from the slot. The reason why the Cowboys were so efficient last year, everyone wants to talk about Ezekiel Elliott and his emergence, and for good reason. With his emergence came this Cowboys offense. It made things a lot easier on Dak and the rest of this Cowboys offense. We talk about the offensive line, and they're extraordinary, which is why Ezekiel Elliott is so good. But no one really talked about the efficiency the Cowboys had on third downs, and a lot of the reason why Cole Beasley and his ability to win on third downs, Jason Witten and his ability to win on third downs. You have guys that win on third downs in the slot at the tight end position. You're going to move the sticks. You're going to put yourself in positions to score points and win ball games. This is a guy that can win on third downs out of the slot. That's why you see so many teams drafting athletic tight ends. That's why you see so many teams going after the smaller scat type of receiver, because those are the guys that win on third downs and move the sticks. That's what a guy like Ryan Switzer can do for this football team. He's a youngster. That's the next pro. He's a guy that catches the football in that North Carolina offense, where it's a wide open spread offense. A lot of hitches, a lot of quick hitters, a lot of bubble screens, a lot of let's get the football into playmakers' hands and see if they can't pick up yards after the catch. Ryan Switzer was one of the best at doing that in all of college football, and it was because of his background that he was so good. Speaking of which, special teams value. Now, this is a guy that I could easily see returning punts and potentially kickoffs, but especially punts at the next level. 7 punt return touchdowns in his career, including 5 in his freshman season for North Carolina. He was extraordinary as a punt returner before his primary role shifted from return man to receiver. This guy's a dynamic punt returner, outstanding at making guys miss in short quarters and tight spaces. And so, again, these are the types of players that are definitely going to make your roster and have an impact quickly. Guys that can do more, see the field more. And this is one of those guys that I think going to help you as a receiver, but more importantly, I think he's going to see the field as a special teams guy that can easily get on the field and make some big plays for the Dallas Cowboys in his rookie season. 7 punt return touchdowns. That is a ton at the collegiate level. Let's move on to his cons. His size, okay, at 5'8", 181, that's no secret. He's not a big guy, but again, you can make a living in the slot in this league at 5'8", 181. So I'm not going to really harp on that too much. We've seen smaller guys get it done in this league in the slot. Add Ryan Switzer to the list of guys that are going to be really diminutive in the slot, but win in the slot. No acceleration ability. Now, this is something that I noticed on tape watching him. He never runs away from defenders. He always gets caught from behind. He's one of those guys that he's got enough quicks and enough speed to run and get yards after the catch, but he doesn't usually have enough to pull away. Like a Cole Beasley, he never usually gets away, but Cole Beasley always feels like he can get away. I don't feel that is the case with Ryan Switzer. I don't think he's getting away from an athletic linebacker. I don't think he's getting away from an athletic corner or safety. They're going to catch him and get him down or push him out of bounds. He's not a guy that accelerates away. He looks like he labors when he runs fast, but nonetheless, he's still going to be a dynamic guy for you as a special teamer and in the returns game. So as a receiver as well, excuse me. Hands aren't his first option to catch the football is the last con. Again, I'm nitpicking here. You would love to see a guy snatch the football out of the air with his hands just about every opportunity that he gets, but he's not that guy. He's a cradle guy. He's a guy that will catch it with his hands. I've seen him catch it on more than enough occasions to know that his hands are legit. But I've also seen him bobble and double catch some footballs as well, but it doesn't matter. He catches it. Like I said earlier, he's a guy that will use his body, that will use the cradle technique, that will do anything that he has to catch the football. Whatever makes you comfortable, as long as you catch the football, it's fine by me. And so I love this selection. Gives the Cowboys some more flexibility and versatility on the offensive and special teams side of things. In the 4th round, 133rd pick overall, North Carolina wide receiver Ryan Switzer for me is another triple. The Cowboys simply do a great job early in the draft of identifying talent and bringing them into the fold and then using them very well. It's these later picks where they go off on these 6th and 7th round tangents that really get on my nerves, because again, a lot of these guys aren't going to make your football team. A lot of these guys aren't going to be contributors. And so let's move on to that portion of the draft for the Cowboys. Now, this next player, I think he's going to make this, not only make this team, but be a guy that's going to see the field quite often, maybe even in his rookie season. 6th round, 191st pick overall. La Tech defensive back Xavier Woods is the selection. From all reports, Cowboys were extremely high on this guy, and they got their man in the 6th round of this draft. Let's talk about him. Physicality is the first thing that I noticed when I watched the tape on this guy. I'm watching him smash guys left and right. He's a physically imposing safety. Doesn't look it. You look at him, he doesn't look the part of a safety. He looks like a cornerback. All right, but he comes up with bad intentions every single time, and he's the type of guy that will have receivers looking over their shoulder to make sure he's not coming. Now, it's a gift and a curse. We'll talk about that a little bit later as to why, but just know that this guy's physical and he's looking to lay the lumber each and every single time he's coming to hit somebody. He's got instincts. Now, he's not the fastest guy in the world. I don't think that he's as natural a fit as a free safety as you would like, but for all of the different detriments to his game, I think he makes up for a lot of those liabilities with instincts. He's around the football so much, which is why the Cowboys loved him. We'll talk about him being around the football as that's the next pro, but his instincts are A1. He's around the football, and you can't make plays if you're not where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. He does a really good job of identifying where the quarterback is looking to go with the football. He does a great job of just being where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there, getting the upper hand by gaining a step on the offense, by making that initial read and taking off and going to where the ball is going to be. Speaking of which, always around the action. He's a playmaker. That's the next pro. 14 interceptions and 5 forced fumbles in the last 3 seasons. You're talking about a guy that is around the football making plays, and he's not satisfied with just picking it off. This is a guy that's looking to take it to the house. And so I just love what Xavier Woods brings to the table from a playmaker standpoint. These are the types of guys that you can't explain it, but they're always around the action, and good things seem to happen for these players because they are where they're supposed to be. Sort of like a Malcolm Jenkins in Philadelphia, just always seems to be around the action. Xavier Woods, one of those types of players. Gets ball carriers on the ground. That's the next pro. It's not always pretty. It's not always aesthetically pleasing, but he does a really good job. He's a headhunter at times. He'll grab you around the collar and sling you down. He'll bump you with his shoulder out of bounds. He always finds a way to get guys out of bounds or on the ground. It's not always pretty, like I said. A lot of times it's him just slinging somebody or laying a shoulder into him. But again, it's effective. And at the end of the day, that's all we care about. Outstanding ball skills. I don't really have to explain this to you. I just told you the man had 14 interceptions over the last 3 seasons. So I shouldn't have to explain to you that this guy has exceptional ball skills, but I will tell you anyway, he has exceptional ball skills. He makes plays on the football like a wide receiver. If the ball's in the air, he says, look, we got just as much opportunity to get it as you do. It's equal opportunity, and I'm going to go ahead and go for mine. And he'll go and take the football out of the air as if it was meant for him. Love those types of defenders who see the football as theirs when it's in the air and not the other way around. He's a guy that's looking to attack the football, not always looking to attack the receiver. There's a time and a place to light the receiver up, and he does that. There's a time and a place to go and attack the football, and he does that as well. You go to his cons. Size. He's 5'11", 197. That's not generally what you're looking for in a safety. Like I told you, at first blush, at first glance, I thought he was a cornerback because he looked a part of a corner. He did not look imposing. He didn't look big. He didn't look physical. He didn't look like a safety. But again, in this day and age in the NFL now, you're seeing a shift in safeties and you needing to be able to play coverage, be able to be versatile enough to play free safety and strong safety. Go and check a tight end or receiver 30 yards away from the line of scrimmage, but then also be able to come up and be physical in the run game. And he can do a little bit of both. Does he excel at both? Let's talk about that. He's not a natural free safety and he's a liability in coverage. The one game that I would point you to prove that, and part of the reason he's a 6th-round pick despite his size, is the fact that he doesn't run well with guys in man-to-man coverage. I watched him against Western Kentucky and Taywan Taylor, a guy that was selected by the Tennessee Titans in the draft. And Taywan Taylor had a field day against him. He could not keep up with him. He struggled in coverage. The NFL, if you're going to play that free safety position, they're looking for Earl Thomas and Eric Berry type players. Now, again, it's unfair to compare him to those guys. Those were 1st-round picks, and for good reasons. This is a 6th-round pick, so there, of course, are going to be limitations. That's his biggest limitation to me, is you can't ask him to come down over the slot, over an athletic tight end, over an athletic receiver, and ask him to stick with them in coverage. He's not a Tyrann Mathieu. He's not an Eric Berry. He's not an Earl Thomas. He can't do those things that those elite safeties do, and that's why he's here in the 6th round. But nonetheless, he's a guy that can do everything good and playmaking ability well. And so he's got some ability. You just got to be careful in what you ask him to do and who you ask him to do it against, or you could get him into some trouble. And then finally, he doesn't wrap up. He's a shoulder guy. He wants to come in, have the big hit, the highlight stick, but he's not wrapping up. He misses a lot of tackles because of that, and he's going to miss even more tackles at the next level if he does not wrap up ball carriers. They're going to bounce off him. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster at this level. He's going to have to wrap up and not try to use the shoulder on every defender. He can't use the horse collar sling down technique because guys will duck and just shoo him off like a little fly at this level. He's going to have to be more technically sound when he comes up and tries to get guys on the ground. But for a 6th-round pick, this is actually good value. I'm anxious to see what Xavier Woods does in this defense. I think he's got an opportunity to be an impact player for the Cowboys in year number 1. And so we'll see what happens in the 6th round, 191st pick overall. Louisiana Tech defensive back Xavier Woods for me is a double. I think he's a quality selection in the 6th round. I want to see what they have planned for him. But again, generally 6th-round picks aren't guaranteed anything. I don't see Xavier Woods missing out on this Cowboys roster in his rookie season. We move on to the next 6th-round pick, 216th overall. Florida State cornerback Marquez White is the selection. Here's a guy that I talked about earlier. I referenced him earlier when I said he looks like a 6-foot corner. He actually looks more like he's 6'2". When you look at him, he's long-armed, long-legged, and you look at him, you say, oh, this guy's about 6'1", 6'2". He's only 6 feet, but he looks the part of a long 6-foot corner. And so size and length are the first pros here. He's 6 feet, and he's got 32-inch arms. He's a long defender. And so unlike a Chidobe Awuzie, who's also 6 feet, this is a guy that's a little bit longer. And so because of that length, he can make up some ground even when he's out of a play. He's got good eyes from zone coverage. There's a play against Clemson where he's in zone coverage and he baits Deshaun Watson into throwing an interception. It's a beautifully executed play by Marquez White. He's in an underneath zone coverage, playing a little bit of cover 2. It looks like he's about to take a receiver that's running sort of a speed out. He disguises it well. He drops underneath that speed out, but then turns pivots as he's eyeballing Deshaun Watson, who's trying to go to the receiver over top of him at the next level. He sags underneath that corner route, picks it off, beautifully done. And again, That's what you're looking for when a guy has the opportunity to key quarterback's eyes in zone coverage, is to make those types of plays. He trapped him, made a play. It was a big play at that juncture of the game. Uses stiff one-arm jam at line of scrimmage. He does a really good job of just using a really physical one-arm chuck at the line of scrimmage to dishevel receivers and get them off their route and the timing of what needs to be done. And then he kind of gets back into his coverage. And so it looks good. It feels like something that could work at the next level if he continues to execute it the way he did in college. We'll see what happens. If he misses, he's going to be at a very steep disadvantage because he does it so hard and so aggressively. If he whiffs, he's going to be well out of position and that receiver is going to be wide open. But I like it. It was effective. I want to see him continue to do that at the next level. Has starting experience at Florida State, 26 consecutive starts to wrap up his career at Florida State, played well for them. And so that translates to the next level as we talk about his cons. His speed, he's lacking in that department. He's a 4.59 40 guy. And you know, normally when you go to your pro day, you usually shave off a few tenths of a second when you go there. And he didn't do that. He actually got slower at his pro day. So that 4.59 may even be generous. He's not fast. So that's a problem in itself. We'll see what the Cowboys decide to do with him. And it's not like you can just move him to safety. He's not a big guy and he's not an aggressive tackler. Speaking of which, be more aggressive as a tackler. He's not aggressive as a tackler. He's one of those guys that if they can handle it, I'm going to let them handle it. I don't really want any part of it. So I don't think he's a guy that you can transition anywhere else. If he's not a corner, he's not going to be on this roster. He's got a stiff high back pedal. So it's a little choppy. It hurts him in the transition from back pedal to sprint. And as we've already mentioned, he doesn't have any motion to waste. That speed is not going to allow him to catch up with anybody. So that back pedal being stiff and high, that's problematic for a guy like Marquez White. And finally, he needs to get his head around faster. I talked about that earlier and how I love Jordan Lewis because he gets his head around. Same with Chidobe Awuzie. This is a guy that doesn't get his head around fast enough. And because of that, he's not a really good LLCer. He doesn't look nor locate the football because when he does look, the football is already on its way and it's basically there. So he don't look back, but the ball's already there. The receiver's already caught the football. He has no idea what's going on. So he needs to look a little bit sooner so that he can locate the ball. He struggles in that department. You can't contest what you don't see. And so he struggles to me in that department. And because of that, in the 6th round, 216th pick overall, Florida State cornerback Marquez White, for me, is a double. He's got some traits to work with, but as far as a guy that I'm confident in making this roster, the Cowboys are desperate at cornerback, but I don't know if they're desperate enough to have a guy like Marquez White make this roster. They did sign Nolan Carroll, if I'm not mistaken, in the free agency. I don't see a guy like Marquez White making this roster initially. He may make the practice squad, but I don't see him cracking this 53-man roster as we go on to the next selection. And this is where we start to get into Cowboys territory every year. 3 7th-round picks. What the hell are you doing? Let's start with the first of those 3 7th-round picks. 228th overall, Florida defensive tackle Joey Ivey is the selection. 6'3", 301 pounds, high motor. He's a guy that hustles, gives you everything he's got on every single snap, diagnoses the play quickly. He can decipher run from pass and does a good job of not getting caught up in play action fakes and things of that nature. He can work up the field. He can be disruptive and penetrate from time to time. You don't see it very often. Played on a very talented Florida defense. You would think he would have made more plays, but he simply did not. And so I wasn't very impressed. As a matter of fact, let's get to his cons. He's ineffective at the point of attack. This guy was constantly uprooted and moved out of the way. He can't stand up to double teams. Double teams wash him completely out of the play. Guys that are strong at the point of attack as guards and centers will just pick this guy up and move him. I saw a guy that tried hard but absolutely went nowhere. Snap in and snap out. No explosion whatsoever is the next con. He's not explosive, doesn't come off the snap and attack the offensive lineman. He doesn't make offensive linemen get back on their heels. There's nothing to fear with a guy like Joey Ivey on the field. To me, best case scenario, he is a rotational depth guy. Finally, he's a limited impact player. To me, a dime a dozen defensive tackle. You can find these types of guys anywhere. You didn't have to spend a 7th round pick on him. You could have signed this guy as an undrafted free agent. That's how little I think of Joey Ivey. And again, I hope he succeeds. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he makes this roster, and I hope he goes on to have a productive NFL career. I just don't see it. I was disappointed in this pick. You actually took a guy 30 or 20 picks later in the draft that I think is a better player along the defensive line than Joey Ivey. And so in the 7th round, 228th pick overall, Florida defensive tackle Joey Ivey for me is a single. Really disappointed in this selection. And this is the type of picks I'm talking about when I say you're wasting time, you're wasting resources with 3 7th round picks. Generally, these guys don't make your roster, and the Cowboys do this type of thing every single year. You go to the next pick. 7th round, 239th overall. Ohio State wide receiver Noah Brown is the second. Now, I actually do like this pick, and I actually do think this guy has some promise. We'll see what happens. Size and athleticism. You're talking about a 6'2 receiver at 222 pounds. That is a good-sized NFL receiver. He's got some athleticism. He can run a little bit, 4.57 40. We'll talk about his speed and all those things a little bit later on, but he can move. All right, and so with that size and a little bit of movement skills, you got a guy that has the makings to be an outstanding NFL receiver if he's coached up and is able to take that coaching and transfer it to the field. Physicality. This is a guy that showed up at Ohio State at 240 pounds, and he plays like a guy that's 240 pounds. If you look at him block, and that's what they used him a lot for at Ohio State when they weren't throwing it to him in the red zone. This is a guy that was extremely physical. He would deplete linebackers, blindside them on crackdown blocks. He's a guy that just would devour corners, especially if they wanted nothing to do in the run game. He would devour them and swallow them up in the run game as a blocker. He's extremely physical, plays the position physical and physically. And I think this is a guy that, if nothing else, you put him out there when you know you're going to run the football and allow him to just destroy linebackers on crackdowns and crack motion, and also corners who want no part of the run game. He can box out DBs with his size. Does a really good job of boxing out DBs with that 6'2 frame and shielding them away from the football. If you want to see him at his best, Oklahoma game early in the season, 2016, second game of the year, 4 touchdowns in that game for Noah Brown. Everyone thought he was going to explode in college football, and that was the best you were going to get from Noah Brown. Some of that has to do with the quarterbacking position. J.T. Barrett, not the best thrower of the football, but nonetheless, the best of Noah Brown was in that game, and he showed the ability to box out and be a red zone target. Speaking of which, red zone ability is the next pro, and you saw it in that game. 4 touchdowns, all of them big plays in the end zone. These weren't catch and run situations. These were, hey, I'm in the end zone. I'm a big boy. Get me the football. I'll make a play for you. He did that in that game. Outstanding blocker in the run game. I've already explained that, so I'm not going to go into explicit details. He's a guy that can block better than most in this draft at the receiver position. And finally, upside. This is a guy that only played at Ohio State really for 1 full season, dealt with some injuries. Everyone thought he was going to be a breakout player in 2015. He broke his leg, missed that entire year, comes back in 2016, expects him to do big things, starts out with a bang. I talked about that Oklahoma game and the 4 touchdowns. Really didn't do much thereafter. Some of that can be attributed to the Ohio State offense and J.T. Barrett at quarterback, but nonetheless, this is a guy that has plenty of upside, and if you project him to get better as a receiver with more time, then this is a guy that in the 7th round could be a steal for you down the road. You go to his cons. He's raw and inexperienced. Like I said, played 1 year really of football at Ohio State because of the injuries. He's raw. There's a lot of things that he has to do better. He has to run routes better, has to set up routes better. I mean, he's a guy that kind of tells you what he's going to do as a route runner. So there's a lot of things he needs to clean up as a wide receiver. But nonetheless, that's why you take him in the 7th round and you work with him. He's got the broken leg in 2015. He did it at practice, and he was having a hell of a camp. Everyone was excited about what this guy was bringing to the table, and you didn't get to see him in 2015. So that really limited what he has done at the collegiate level, and so that's why he's so inexperienced. And then finally, he moves like a guy that was once 240 pounds. I think he could be a lot more explosive than what he is, but he looks the part of a guy that used to be 240. His frame looks good. You can tell he's chiseled down, but he still doesn't move as explosively as you would like him to. And I don't know if he will ever be that explosive receiver that you would like him to be. But nonetheless, at 6'2", 222, with his abilities, he can catch the football, got good hands. I'd love to see Noah Brown get an opportunity in this Cowboys football team. And to me, I look at him as a Bryce Butler replacement. No, he's not as fast as Bryce Butler, but he's got similar size. And I think the Cowboys look at him as a guy that can be an upgrade over Bryce Butler, who's on the last year of his deal. Noah Brown can come in and do everything that Bryce Butler can do and maybe even do it better with time. And so in the 7th round, 239th pick overall, Ohio State wide receiver Noah Brown for me is a double. I actually like this 7th round pick, and I don't have a problem with it. And so we'll see what the Cowboys do with Noah Brown and if he makes his roster or if he's a guy that they elect to try to stick on their practice squad. As we go to their final pick in this draft, 7th round, 246th overall, Colorado defensive lineman Jordan Correll is the selection. 6'3", 300 pounds, so his size, that's a pro right off the bat. I think he's got solid size. We're going to talk about that size and that weight and how he needs to sculpt it, but nonetheless, it's good enough size to get it done as a defensive lineman in the National Football League. He's got solid movement skills. When you look at him, he doesn't look the part of a guy that's going to move well, but I was wrong. And off first blush, I was like, okay, he's a big fatty. He's not going to be very athletic, but he moves a lot better than what I anticipated, that's for certain. He's got penetrating ability. You watch him against Stanford, and that was one of the first games I put on, and he penetrated in that game. The first couple of plays, he was a nuisance. Made a nice little tackle, and then ended up getting a sack to end the first possession of that game. And so he's a guy that can get in, make some plays, can penetrate. He's got some penetrating ability, that is for certain. He has flashes of quickness. He's got a swim move that allows him to get into the backfield and be a disruptive force. And so you see that from time to time with him, and it gives you some hope that if he can get into that weight and conditioning program, trim up some of the fat, turn it into muscle, and make it better weight, you could be talking about a guy that could easily make this roster and be a contributor along the defensive line. Gap and contain integrity. He's a guy that stays at home where he's supposed to be. If he's supposed to be man in the B gap, he's in the B gap. If he's supposed to be in the C gap, he's at home in the C gap. Does a good job of maintaining that gap discipline and integrity, and doesn't overcommit or over pursue and open up a gaping hole for the running back. And finally, he's got versatility. At Colorado, and they were a great defense in 2016. He played base and defensive tackle, so 5 and 3 tech for them. I think the Cowboys are going to be looking at him in a similar light. I like him better inside as a 3 tech than I did a 5 tech, so I'd love to see him get more snaps as a 3 tech. I don't think he can hold, I don't think he's good enough as a defensive end. I think he's much better as a defensive tackle. That's where the quickness wins out a lot of times. And so I'd love to see him just strictly be put at defensive tackle and stay there and not be moved around. Cons, bad weight. He's a guy that is really soft in the midsection, doesn't have a lot of good weight as we speak. He needs to tone up. He needs to turn, like, he's the polar opposite of Joey Ivy, the guy that I didn't like as your first 7th round pick. Joey Ivy looks as lean and trim as you will find as a 300-pound man. And Jordan Correll looks polar opposite. He's as big and sloppy as you will find as a 300-pound guy. So there's some bad weight there that if he can tone down, will really benefit him moving forward. I'd love to see him have more pass rush juice. He's a guy that I feel like a lot of times doesn't have enough juice as a pass rusher, doesn't give you enough moves, doesn't give me enough energy as a pass rusher. Sometimes he's content on just leaning on blockers. If you want to hit home, you can't just sit there and hand fight with offensive linemen, because they'll sit there and do that with you all day if you're standing in the same spot that you were when you got off the snap. I'd love to see more pass rush juice from Jordan Correll, because I think he actually has the potential to do that and be more aggressive and assertive. To me, he's a passive defender. He's a guy that'll kind of stand around when he decides before the snap, I'm going to be aggressive on this play. he's a good football player. Some of this, I believe, had to do with him being a little tired. He played a lot of snaps. But nonetheless, I'd love to see him be a little bit more assertive and aggressive, especially in the run game, where I think he can be a little bit more physical at the point of attack and get into plays. But nonetheless, 7th round, 246th overall selection. Colorado defensive lineman Jordan Carell, for me, is a double. I can see him making this roster. I can see him being on the practice squad and making this roster down the line. But again, 7th round picks, nothing is guaranteed. We'll see what happens with this Cowboys draft as a whole. So let's go over the scores for this draft, which I thought was a very impressive draft. I love the first 5 picks. After that, the rest of those guys are a crapshoot. I'm really intrigued by Noah Brown in the 7th round, however. But quickly, in the first round, you get a home run. You get 3 consecutive triples to follow that, which is extraordinary. You get a double for Xavier Woods, Marquez White, Noah Brown, and Jordan Carell, so 4 doubles. And you get a single for Joey Ivy in the 7th round. You tally all of that up. You get 1 triples bonus for all of the triples that you had. You get 2 doubles bonuses for all the doubles. You tally it up, it's a 29. You divide by the number of picks, 9, and it's a 3.22 triple for the Dallas Cowboys in the 2017 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything. And now, National Football League. Got one question for you. Who's next?